Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. We'd like to thank Cloud Native Computing Foundation for sponsoring our podcast from CloudNativeCon KubeCon Berlin. Thanks very much for the support here. We've had a great show. Hey, it's Alex Williams of the New Stack here at CloudNativeCon KubeCon in Berlin with Dan Kohn of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, your executive director. Would that be the title that you would give?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Thrilled to be back with you.
Yeah, good to be back with you. And so, first of all, we've had 1,500 people here for this event, and that's triple the size of Seattle. And I expect that in Austin in December, we'll see, I expect double that amount. The community is really like booming, right? And I'm wondering what that is making you think about in terms of the organizational challenges that you need to really be thinking about as this community grows, because when I talk to people, there's limitations, right? There's limitations, for example, in GitHub, right? GitHub's can be difficult, for instance, to keep the community that size moving, and and there's new projects always coming on, right? And so you got to be managed to think about those. There's new discussions about continuous integration, and how do as the executive director, what are you thinking about as you move into to the rest of the year, where we expect to see the continued growth of the ecosystem overall?
Yeah. It's fascinating from a project perspective that we have 9 projects now in CNCF, and they're actually at extremely different scales. And so the smallest ones are our inception level projects, CoreDNS and linkerd, and these are pretty tiny. They have 1 or 2 maintainers.
Right.
And they're thrilled with the attention that we can give them. They come to CloudNativeCon, KubeCon, and I was meeting with the maintainers this morning, and they're talking about having these rooms where there are overflow crowds, there are people sitting on the floor, the excitement around the event, and we're bringing new people, new interest to it. And they do have challenges, but they're much more the most basic. Okay, how do we get the initial excitement around it, the initial continuous integration setup, the initial processes, all that kind of thing. And then we have our sort of middle-sized projects of like Prometheus, where there are hundreds of companies out there using Prometheus. It's a well-established project, but they're also now dealing with some challenges of growth, that they are trying to write down their governance structure.
Right.
They have multiple committers, but they need to set up some more processes. They want to have a little bit more of a pipeline of how they bring some of their active contributors and help them mature into contributors, and we'd love to sort of help them with some of those processes. But we don't do that for them. There's not sort of a single CNCF process that we mandated to them. And then you look at Kubernetes, and it is on a completely different scale of anything else out there. There's 54 million projects on GitHub, and any way you measure it, Kubernetes, 54 million, and any way you measure it, GitHub is in the top 10. So by pull requests and issue commits, it's number 1.
Right.
By authors or commits, it's in the top 10. And unfortunately, GitHub is an amazing resource. It's absolutely incredible.
Yes.
And yet it's actually not quite designed for the kind of volume that Kubernetes is dealing with. And so in a lot of ways, the community is kind of bursting in the seams.
Right.
And so even with all the resources of Google and Red Hat and IBM and Huawei and everyone else, we're looking at things like, can we help build some robots to deal with pull requests and try and make our contributors and our folks a little bit more efficient on reviewing the outstanding pull requests, and are there some things we can help along the edges on on dealing with continuous integration, and it's a little scary how fast the project's moving.
Machine learning for
Yes,
open source communities?
We need to put all those developers out of business and just replace it with, no, I don't think that's quite on the horizon yet.
I think it's more like, it's like, what can the machines do for you, right? It's like,
so, yeah, but the common thread of all of those is that CNCF is trying to provide support to our projects, not get in their way, that we can't do the work for them, but we can try and assist them and be helpful to them. And we're trying to work with those developers and see what we can do.
That's really interesting. So the mission of the organization, it doesn't change at all during this process.
No, I mean the exciting part for us and the big news for this event is Cloud Native's always been about orchestration, containerization, microservices. We've always sort of been a leader with orchestration with Kubernetes. And then in the last month, we had a gRPC come into the project. And I feel like this news actually got missed a little bit this month, but gRPC is an unbelievably exciting project. The basic idea is if you're using JSON REST as an API standard, which sort of everybody out there is, and you find that it's not performant enough, and at certain scales it's not, then we think most folks out there are going to want to replace it with gRPC. It's the replacement that Google developed after 15 years of using Stubby internally. And for example, Azure is using it internally, Apple's looking at it, hundreds of companies are building on this technology. It's built on top of HTTP2, and that was just contributed by Google to CNCF this month. And so that's a huge solution in microservices. And then our news yesterday that we're just incredibly excited about on the containerization front is that Docker contributed Containerd and CoreOS contributed Rocket. And so we think that makes CNCF the clear focal point for containerization going forward.
So it almost sounds like there's been an effort to form some balance, right? You know, in the overall community by, Containerd and Rocket, I think, are real prime examples of that, right? They compete, but they represent two different kind of communities, so to speak, that are falling underneath the CNCF umbrella now, and they'll provide some, it seems like the goal here is to provide some, again, some balance and being able to then give people some choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a little unclear how that will shake out going forward, but we're incredibly excited to have those communities involved and to have that collaboration going forward.
Right. So what's ahead for the CNCF? What's on your list? I mean, I know there's going to be some new projects that will be considered. Are there any ones that you can mention that are at least being discussed at this point?
Sure. I'd say that one twinkle in the corner of our eye is networking, where there's definitely some real interest in the Container Networking Initiative. CNI is a standard that Kubernetes supports, but also Mesos and Cloud Foundry uses. And then there's 3 implementations of that: Flannel, Calico, and WeaveNet, and we've been looking at those projects very closely. And so, there's also a lot of interest in the storage space, although I'd say that's a little bit less mature. And so that's on the project front. In terms of the community and events and just kind of things moving forward, CNCF runs 2 events per year, so we keep coming back to Europe, and then we do one North American event. But we also like to go out to other organizations' events and meet developers where they're at.
Right.
So we're going to be at DockerCon in 3 weeks in Austin.
Great.
We're going to be sponsoring their Containerd Summit. Now that that's our project, we're very excited about that. And we're also going to be at OpenStack in May and hosting a Kubernetes Day. There, there's a ton of interest in Kubernetes within the OpenStack community. We're going to be in Tokyo in early June for the Open Source Summit, and in Beijing in June for the LC3 that the Linux Foundation is doing. And then our biggest event of the year is CloudNativeCon, KubeCon in Austin, which is December 6th and 7th. And as you were saying before, we think that may be double the size of this one, both as our community grows and then as more projects come in and more people come together. So we're really excited to, and I will promise, after Seattle was a little overcrowded, and here in Berlin where we were a little overcrowded, at the Austin Convention Center, we're really quite confident we will have plenty of room in our breakout rooms.
I think you'll be all right.
We do encourage you to come and participate.
Excellent. I'm wondering about the networking projects. CNI, there's also LibNetwork, right, out there. I mean, you've now accepted 2 runtimes, container runtimes. Would you consider multiple networking?
Sure, it's definitely a possibility. I mean, I will remind you, my job and Chris Anchek, our COO, our job is to tee up the project. And then it is our technical oversight committee that actually votes on it. But sure, it's totally a possibility to consider multiple ones.
Well, Dan, I really appreciate you taking some time to talk here at the ending of the CloudNativeCon, KubeCon conference, and so appreciate that. And we look forward to following the progress of all these different projects during the course of the year.
And we're thrilled to have you back.
Thank you.
Kind of consider you a fixture here.
Yeah, well, we
definitely look forward to seeing you in Austin.
We love it.
Yeah.
Well, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alex.
We'd like to thank Cloud Native Computing Foundation for sponsoring our podcast from CloudNativeCon, KubeCon Berlin.